Episode 3, huh?
Yeah, episode 3.
Here we go.
Oh my goodness.
All right.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah. What do we have today to drink? Unbranded soda.
Unbranded soda. Until they start sending that
Till they
loot.
start sponsoring
That
us.
one we have official sponsor because the can will be on the table.
Oof, it'll be legit.
Yeah, we're a little ways away from that. I think. We'll have some like janky beaver buzz or something. Low level.
Oh my gosh. Welcome to another episode of Modify with Trickfactory Customs. If this is your first time watching, my name is Elvis.
Tim?
Rob.
The topic for today is why LS Swap is the best engine choice for someone to go with.
Oh man.
when they're working on a project car or whenever they're just making doing an engine swap, why it's the best or not the best option. And I know, again, I think you have a strong feeling
I have a
towards
pretty
this.
strong opinion towards it.
So,
But
with
that's
said-
mostly comes from being a business owner, but we can get into that.
Yeah. So with that said, before we get started, I just want you guys to, if this is your first time watching, you can watch this on video on our YouTube channel at Trickfactory Customs. If you're just listening to it on a podcast for the first time, you can also, if you're interested, you can follow us on Instagram, Trickfactory Customs, TikTok, all of that stuff. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up as well. With that said, let us dive into it. So, LS Swap everything. I feel like LS Swap has become like almost like everyone just says LS Swap this, LS Swap that.
Yeah, do it because it's easy, right? You hear it all the time.
But I feel like there's also a strong community that's like, nope, we're not LS swapping. There's a lot of, but before we actually get started, for those of you that might not know, we want to start at the bare basics, like the beginning of what is an engine swap.
What's an engine swap?
Yes.
Basically, you can do like an on-brand engine swap. So you'll take something out of either a more powerful model within the same brand and put it in a different car. Or what's more common now is you're taking completely different brand power plant and putting it into a different platform.
Very interesting.
So those are the two different, like the very different mindsets in doing engine swaps.
Yeah. So out with the old, in with the new.
So what is an LS? What is an LS engine?
What is an LS?
An LS is basically the GM's most, I would say, reliable, modifiable platform that they've produced in a long time. And it works. So it's become super, super popular because it's not overly expensive and it just has, like, there's no other way to say it, has insane potential for what it is. Like, there's not another platform that I can think of that has the amount of attainable potential of anything else. So, like, I mean, your average guy can get 1,500 horsepower, which even 5 years ago, 6 years ago was like mind-blowing numbers. And now you got kids running around with 1,000 horsepower for pretty, like, not a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously the more money you spend, the more reliable it's gonna come. But for the average person to experience 1,000 horsepower in their lifetime is insane. Like 10 years ago, that was like, that was
mind-blowing.
like full-on race car stuff.
Because I remember when the Bugatti Veyron came out. I mean, that's 2005. That feels like, 15 years now or something? But still, like 1,000 horsepower at that time was unheard of in a road car. But you're like, wait, 1,000 horsepower?
Yeah.
A quad turbo W16
and what did it cost? It was an obscene amount of money.
$1 million.
And that was 15 years ago.
Yeah. And so for those of you guys that don't know, before the LS, Chevy had what? The small block
Chevy,
big blocks
and then,
of the 70s.
The traditional platforms were small block Chevy, big block Chevy.
Right,
So-
and they were around for
Like 80 years. Like literally
So
80 years.
long.
A lot of iterations too, and all of that. The small blocks and big blocks.
So basically the
sizes.
LS is like a lot of the previous sort of race things that you would do to bolster a small block Chevy are standard in an LS.
Okay.
So like a big thing back in the day was like a 4-bolt main and all these type of things. And then now it's just in an LS, it's basically like a 6-bolt main more or less. Like it has all these things built into it, even in its cheapest form.
Yeah. I mean, the engineers at Chevrolet, GM, when they were doing the LS, they took all of the things that made a super like fully built race small block Chevy engine and just put that all into their standard build. And because of that, it's freaking amazing. Like a bone stock truck LS, which is like yesteryear's full tilt race engine, like bone stock.
That's pretty awesome.
So like we joke about it a lot in the shop. The previous like small block Chevy, and you were lucky enough to be here for it, was like the hot ticket was a 383 stroker. Like that was like the hot ticket. And we just dynoed one, which was a fairly strong version of what it was. And it put 360 to the rear wheels, which is like a 425 horsepower motor. But in that time, that was probably a $30,000 build, like Brodex heads, roller rockers, like all the best of everything.
Blueprinted.
Ballast and blueprinted. Ballast and blueprinted that in there. Now your standard 6-liter truck motor in a Silverado makes 425 horsepower.
And that's stock.
Stock, like no changes, no nothing.
That's crazy.
And then it's all up from there.
Yeah. So the potential from that point is absolutely staggering, right? I mean, it's common knowledge that you put an aftermarket camshaft, some new springs into a stock truck LS, even a 4.8 liter, and you're gaining, extra 50, 100 horsepower, just absolutely insane.
And the reliability is off the charts.
Yeah.
Like, again, like in the time that you've been here, we've done some LS swaps, and do you ever see them again?
Mind-blowing.
You never see them again. It's like the only time they stop by is to tell you how happy they are. Whereas 383 guy is like overheating, he's got all these issues, and now he's trying to add modern amenities, and that motor is just not built to sustain it. Like it doesn't, like even that little bit of extra load adding air conditioning is like pushing him over the top. Whereas as a LS is like just load it up and the thing will be fine.
Yeah, I have like some stuff written down of why LS engines are, and so we can dive into each one or each point, I guess. So the first one is availability of just how available they are.
It's huge.
So,
there's no shortage.
Yes.
Well, currently there's a shortage of LSs but as far as used stuff for enthusiasts, there's
available everywhere.
You can get one. You don't have to look very hard.
And a lot of junkyards, like they're everywhere. Like for example, like I own, this is my first LS swap, but I own a 1972 Jaguar XJ. And I was looking for an engine swap. Initially, I was gonna do a 350. Actually, I had a 454. Big block that I was gonna put in.
That's a brick.
Yeah, but and I actually got the engine for free. Like the guy that was selling the car with me just gave me the. I was like, oh yeah, I have this engine.
Yeah, it was
and he pulled it from like a motorhome or something.
The worst possible version of a 454.
And
it's like 160 horsepower.
Yeah, well, it does have some good torque though.
Oh yeah,
so
that's true.
But I was going to do all the work to that, and then put it in. But then I was like, wait a second, there's LSs available. And I was like, just for fun, just looking on eBay.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh, what's available? Because I didn't have a lot of junkyards that were close to me at the time when I lived in California. I mean, there probably are, but I just didn't even have the energy. Or because in junkyards, you can go a day, you can go to a junkyard, you can pull the engine yourself.
Yeah.
And they charge you like, what? $350 or something, or even cheaper.
Yeah.
Because so I've seen some guys actually go there. They have this. Sometimes they have this.
If you pack it,
those are
amazing.
You carry it. You can take it out of the junkyard, and it's pretty much free, or you pay like $10 or something.
Anything you can pack for $50.
And you would see guys carrying these engines, and I'm like, you guys are insane.
Yeah.
How can you carry all this?
They'll pay for it later. They don't save any money.
They're bags.
Pay for it in the long
it's
run.
terrible. But anyway, it's just interesting how, because they put it in so many things. They put it in work vans. They put it in the Escalade. They put it in the trucks, the 1500s from 1998 or something.
Yeah, 98.
1998 up until I don't know, when did the is that LT then? No, that was not an LS anymore.
No, now it's not an LS. No.
What is it?
Damn.
I forgot. Anyway, yes.
They changed the platform a bit.
Yeah, but so they pretty much the late 90s to 2010-ish.
Is the most, that's probably the most attainable LS.
Affordable, without going too crazy with the very
that
modern
keeps you in like the LS1, LS2, LS3 sort of family of them.
Yeah, but you could there's so many variations of it. You have the 5.3, the 5.7, which is 5.3 liter, 5.7 liter, 6 liter. What else? 6.2.
It goes all the way up to 7 liters.
7. Yeah.
There's a 7. The Z06 I think was a 7 in the C6.
Yeah.
That's pretty
So it's
awesome.
like a 427.
But so availability is pretty crazy because I ended up buying on eBay. I bought my LS. It's not, people don't call it an LS. They call it the L. There's a lot of
LQ9
like
or
snobs, snobs with the whole LS LQ. But I got my 5.3 from a truck, and it was $600 shipped to my door from eBay.
Yeah, with all the stuff.
Yeah,
computer,
it comes with the wiring, everything.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the purists for like the Jags, they're like, why didn't you just leave the normal engine in it? I'm like, why would you leave a 50-year-old engine that blows head gaskets?
Right,
like no
it's
tomorrow.
antiquated, it's unreliable.
It's slow.
Good luck finding parts for it.
Well, that's the reality that pushes you to that place. Is like, you can do that, but the cost and the expense is just too high. It doesn't make any sense.
No.
Like, you're going to rebuild that motor. It's going to cost you, we'll say $15,000 if you want to make it good, where you can drive it in traffic.
Yeah.
But it's probably going to take you a year.
Yep.
Because who do you send your Jaguar motor to?
I know. There's
where do you get Jag performance parts?
Exactly.
And all these different things. And even finding anybody that's familiar with it is going to be enough of a struggle. And if they are specialized in that platform, you're going to pay for it.
Very true.
So whereas the LS is your 370 horsepower, and you're not taxing it in any way. It's in its stock base form.
Yeah.
Insane.
And you're already up almost 100% in the horsepower.
Yeah.
And that's on the very bottom end.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of grief about that. So.
So, I mean, the argument, for LS is, affordability. They're plentiful. The potential is there, and like Tim was just touching on, like if you ever have an issue, it's almost so common. It's a common enough thing that there's so many people out there that could work on it almost anywhere. Like you could go to any backwoods place and find somebody that knows how to wrench on an LS because of just the way they are engineered. They're amazing.
Yeah. And the
So,
aftermarket support is insane.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It is so...
Like pretty much any LS part is a day away. And I'm like, the range is from the most basic stock part all the way up to like 2,000 horsepower parts. Like you want to buy a billet intake, somebody has one for it and it's ready to go.
Yeah.
If you got the money, it's ready to ship.
Yeah.
Whereas so much of this other stuff, you're just waiting, and then like any of those niche performance guys, it's like it's pretty much made to order. So you place an order, you wait 4 months, and then and then you hope you don't break something else. So you spend more time broken down.
Yeah, another interesting thing, like you already touched on it, but is support. The support that's available for it.
Well, even in the sense of just people knowing about them. The actual support in having people that can work on them is insane. Anybody can work on an LS.
Yep.
Like you go on YouTube, you go anywhere, there's
thousands
of people and that aren't intimidated to take it apart.
Yeah.
Like we have other vehicles in the shop right now. I look at the motor and I'm just like, nope. Like I don't even know what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
So it's like in that respect, it's too intimidating. Whereas an LS is like if you have an aptitude for it, you can learn how to work on it.
Yeah, true. Just like with mine, a prime example, I had never touched an engine before, never done anything, but I was like, I want to know how to do this. I didn't have anyone around me that could do that, and so I was like, I just went onto YouTube, went onto Google, and even from things like there's little things you have to swap out if you're putting a truck engine into a car, like the oil pan was too big, and so I had to. But that's what you talked about is availability. The Holly, I just got a Holly pan, and it came my door like 2 or 3 days. It was there. I didn't know how to do anything. Again, YouTube, the internet. I flipped it around. They showed me everything to do to change the oil pan, the pickup tube, all of that stuff, and it didn't even take me long. It was so easy. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this, and it was pretty awesome. And so it's I and then another part too is why it's wiring it too, because with a lot of things, especially with fuel injection, you have to run a lot of wires, have to do all of this stuff. But with the LS, I found that it was available online. There's this resource called lt1swap.com, and he has years of just knowledge there of every connector, everything you need to do to get your engine running in your project car or wherever you put it in, pretty much.
Yeah.
So,
That's a beautiful little gem to find.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, this
Well,
is
that's the
so
problem
easy.
with most motor swaps. As soon as you're going from taking out where it is to where it's going, is wiring and plumbing is the hardest part. Like anybody can just plunk a motor in there. There's usually 4 bolts in a bell housing, and then the rest of it is where all the work comes. So in LS, like you say, there's a million guys, like vehicle specific.
Yeah.
Like I want to put this in this vehicle and I want my dash to work. You're like, no problem, here you go, here's your harness.
Yeah.
It's a piece of cake. Like it's, whereas some of these other ones, it's just, like it's gonna cost you twice as much for wiring than it did for you to buy the motor.
Yep.
So you're not saving anything. Like it's costing you a fortune. Plus, you need to have someone that's really specialized in what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's familiar with those things.
Yeah.
Whereas the GM stuff, like there's only a few different variations of it, so they're pretty well versed in it. Like it's, you just tell them what you got and they'll put the harness together for you.
Yeah.
And I love the, the reliability that comes along with using an LS power plant. I mean, all of that other stuff is fantastic, but like at the end of the day, that reliability and the accessibility for all the parts and whatnot, what you need, means you're going to be driving your project, your hot rod, whatever it is, that much sooner, and you're going to get the opportunity to enjoy it daily, almost with no hiccups ever. I mean, it's just that's a very valuable thing, and we actually see a lot of that now in business. We've been doing a ton of LS conversions on a lot of old stuff, like old muscle cars, hot rods, and all the things, because people are like so sick and tired of having these vehicles that they spent a ton of loot on that are just unreliable and just, not to say that they're junk, but they're just like, you got to be a specific kind of person to want that. Whereas in LS, you could be Joe Schmo. You get in there, turn the key, and you're good to go. Like you're out burning tires with crazy horsepower potential and reliability on the daily.
So
I love that.
Whenever you guys are talking with clients about it, because I'm sure some clients want to stick with what they know. Like a lot of older clients want to stick with the normal like 350 or 454 or 383. So is it hard usually convincing them, or?
Well, a lot of them get married to what they have.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then it becomes like we all get frustrated and want to make what we have work. And it's like, I'm so heavily invested in this. But what normally happens is, by the time you get that to do what they want it to do reliably, you've probably 3/4 of the way to putting an LS in it. But because of the stigma around the LS swap is like, it's almost like a cop-out.
Yeah, it's overdone.
Yeah, and it's overdone and it's easy and it's blah, blah, blah. But it's like, again, like we keep touching on this in these conversations that we have, is like, you have to be honest about your intent. So you put an LS in one of these things and it's like, these guys actually want to go out and drive their car, be able to go to different places, and they're not trying to burn tires. They're not trying to, it's not like a weird pissing contest where you're just throwing numbers back and forth like, oh, I got this. And they get out and they actually get to use their car. I literally have customers now just calling me to see how I'm doing. Like before you would dread, like, oh no, what's wrong now? Like, he's only been gone for a day, and a lot of that other stuff is like, it's so old. Like a lot of people don't take into account the age of that stuff. Like some of that stuff is 50, 60, 70 years old. Like to say that out loud seems crazy, but even the reliability of a 30-year-old engine. A 30-year-old engine's 1990. Like that's not even that crazy.
You know what I mean?
But these guys are running motors from the 70s.
Yeah.
So they're literally running a 50-year-old motor, and they're like, oh, of course you're gonna have reliability issues. Stuff just wears out and it's old. So switching it over to an LS, and then like once you get over the hood popping part, like you can detail out an LS and make it look crazy. Sky's the limit. Like it's insane now. But to make a 500-600 horsepower LS is not that hard. It's pretty easy.
So what do you need to make that kind of power on an LS?
If you started
Like
with a
just
6
basic
liter
stuff.
and you did cam and lifters, you're like 500 horsepower all day
Oh,
long.
shoot.
No problem. And that's fairly inexpensive.
Wow.
And that's not with impeding its reliability at all.
Mm-hmm.
So like these guys spent their entire childhood trying to chase like 300 horsepower. 400 horsepower was like, that was a hot motor. It cost a lot of money. Now they got 500 horsepower and they don't even know what to do with themselves.
Yeah.
Like they're out. But at the same time, a lot of those guys are driving brand new Chev pickups that are 400 or 500 horsepower. Like the norm now is your average passenger car has 375 horsepower.
That's just crazy.
And then you get into any of these big sedans, like some of them are 700-800 horsepower you're pushing out of them. Like we have friends with sedans that are like 775 to the wheels and reliable.
Yeah.
So if you even want to encroach on that and touch that, LS is by far the cheapest and fastest way to get there.
And also going back to the variety of engines that you could get stuff from very like high mileage, like 150,000 miles, $600 up until what? Like, because I know like people like Texas Speed, all of that build motors. So what, like, I don't know, what kind of range is there? And how do you know you're not spending too much on it? Because
Well,
it's
I think
very easy to do.
The biggest thing with the LS and the way the game has changed is previously when you built a 450 horsepower motor in that era, you expected it almost to be unreliable. Like, whereas now when these guys like Texas Speed and Wagner and all these guys are producing these motors, they're producing it at like 1,000 horsepower, 1,200 horsepower, but there's an implied amount of reliability built into it. So it's like when they tell you it's 1,200 horsepower and this is what you're paying for and it's $30,000, but you know you can drive it reliably. Like it's a lot like, so yeah, I don't know how to explain it. Like this old stuff is like, you didn't expect it to work all the time. Like it had to be in your blood. Like, oh, I got to adjust the valves today. Oh, before I take it out again, I got to, mess with the air fuel. This stuff, you don't even got to think about it. Like if it doesn't start, it's probably not the motor. You got a wiring issue or some kind of fuel issue because the motors are just so good.
That's awesome. So for your car, you're currently building a 240.
Yes.
So what engine did you decide to go with?
I went with an LS, of course.
Okay.
I got a 6-liter LS. I believe it's LQ9 from a truck.
Okay.
Work truck.
So it's aluminum?
No, it's cast iron.
Okay.
So it's cast iron and it's a 6-liter out of a truck.
But it can hold more
And
boost. No?
Yes.
the
5.3 is good.
Actually, from what I
yeah, it's a
understand,
6-liter.
I think the 4.8
Okay.
is probably the best for holding
Really?
maximum
Oh, I
boost.
didn't know that. Okay.
Now, I could be wrong, but that's what I heard, and I believe it's because there's more meat in the cylinder walls. It can handle more boost, but right, I got a 6-liter, so
Are you boosting yours then?
mine's gonna be boosted, but I'll be using a centrifugal supercharger. So yeah, available. I got this engine directly out of a work truck. It was totally running. It's got maybe 150,000 K on it, so it's basically brand new. That's another thing. It was like LSs are good for like just crazy amounts of actual mileage.
And what's interesting too is you don't have to build the whole thing. Are you building yours or no?
I'm
doing a full bottom end?
gonna check it out to
Okay.
make sure that it's good. Like, I mean, it's a good idea to like at least take an inspection, a moment to inspect your bearings
Okay.
and your crank and doing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be replacing the camshaft because you know,
You have to.
since you're in there,
Might as well.
do that and that. I'll be putting aftermarket heads on it.
Okay.
And yeah, putting just a different intake other than the truck style one, which actually
Makes more power.
good
Yeah,
power
than
anyways.
the
They're
car
just
one.
not very nice to look at.
Yeah.
So put a new intake on it just for aesthetics.
But I know some guys that actually shave them, like do like some shaving and plastic weld.
The Trailblazer SS intake is, I think, dyno proven to be one of the best intakes that you could possibly get.
Okay.
I mean, there's a couple other aftermarket ones that surpass it by a little bit, but that's testament to the engineering that went into the build of that, the LS engines. So,
Awesome.
anyways, yeah, they're really, really great, and it doesn't take a lot
No.
to do that. So, I got mine. It was relatively inexpensive, and it's going to do everything that I need to do
Yeah.
for not a lot of money, and I'll be able to turnkey and drive it daily with 650 to 700 horsepower.
That's crazy.
No problem.
Daily.
Right. Like, it's just, yeah.
So with your car, the Evo, why did you decide like to go with a fully built, like what were you, because yours is it's fully built. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, of the engine?
Well, the original intention was to put the M120 Mercedes motor in it.
Is that the V12?
The V12. But to get a computer system that would run it, I was going to put ITBs on it and all these different things to get that motor up and running was going to be probably $25,000. But I didn't know I still don't know the actual, like, we haven't pulled that one apart to see how good it is. So it was like a risky endeavor.
Yeah.
Because we didn't really know the history of the motor. And then getting into some other platforms, like we have another build for a customer right now with the 190. He's using the supercharged M113.
Oh, okay.
And then he's purchased the entire VRP speed kit for it, which is like another $20,000. And then he's got to get a standalone and a few other things. So on top of the cost of the motor, by the time he has that thing up and running, he's probably going to be $30,000.
Yeah.
And then now you're pushing the upper edges of the reliability of that motor, because you're already putting in a pretty well-tuned AMG engine. So it's like, it's being pushed pretty hard. Like it's a pretty fine line. So once you push it over the edge, then you got this reliability issue. So you can't just bolt that stuff on. There's a lot of other things you got to do, which is going to help compound the cost. And then the reliability side of it is, I might be able to live with it, but once you start breaking stuff, how long did it take to get these parts? So if I was in Europe, there's a lot more support over there for the aftermarket and Mercedes and all those type of things. You have access to those people. But if I break down, my car's going to be down for 4 months every time something happens. Even trying to get regular Mercedes service parts for some of this stuff now, because it's not current, is 3-4 months to get things, like the simplest little thing. So that helped me steer away from all of that. And then realistically, one of the single biggest influence in it was Cletus McFarlane. Like he was the huge.
I think he put Texas Speed on the map.
Yeah, he put Texas Speed on the map.
So true.
like I'm watching this guy, and he is just completely beating the shit out of these things
over and over
again. So it's like that was like the single biggest, endorsement that he could have possibly gave for this thing. So then I started getting into that, and then I ended up going Texas Speed. So I have a Texas Speed 408 stroker, bottom end, PRC heads, then I did the LME intake, and then twin turbos. So my motor reliably, I should be able to push 1,000, 1,200 horsepower all day long.
Nice.
The top end, based on my fuel system and my turbo setup, is I can do 15, 16. The bottom end can hold more than that, so there is a lot of potential there. I can't foresee ever needing it. So, and then the choices that I made in my car to make it look a little more exotic, because I'm the same as everybody else. I didn't want just the standard looking LS, was that LME intake and then the mirror image turbos, which gives it the exotic look.
It looks so
which I'm
nice.
sure you can attest to, because even though it's just your average LS swap, another LS swap, how many people actually can recognize that it's an LS? They still have to ask what it is.
What motor is this?
Right? So
is this some kind of V12 or
so that's why I made the decisions
engine?
that I made to give it a little bit more of an exotic look, and it worked. But still, in its essence, it's just another LS swap. But
that's another really cool thing is we've mentioned it before, but I just want to reiterate that is the amount of support that there is for these. Like, you can personalize it in any way, shape, or form that you want to, just because there's so many options out there. If you want to change intakes, if you don't want your car to look exactly, or the engine bay to look like, I don't know, Joe Schmo's or any other person's, you can pretty much change that easily just by going to Amazon or wherever you get your parts from and ordering something else, and you're sure it's going to work. And there's different specs. With the different years of LSs, there's different changes, but all that information is all documented in extensively online.
When you're purchasing, that was the single biggest, it's gave me a lot of comfort, because it's like, if you do this, and this, you're gonna get this. So there was, all the guesswork was gone. It's like, how much do you want to make?
Wow.
I want to make this much. Okay, well, you're gonna need this, you're gonna at least need this, and you're gonna need this. And then the amount of knowledge and experience that these people have with it, it's like you put it on a dyno and it's like, that's what it does. Like, you almost don't even have to dyno it anymore. Oh, you're running this, you're gonna make this much.
It's just
It's like, you don't even have to think about it. Whereas some of this other stuff, you might not even make it off the dyno, because it's gonna be in pieces. Like, it's because you're pushing everything and you're trying to find that spot, and half the time it's broken. So it's like, you gotta have deep pockets. And if you want to be that guy, I mean, all the power to you. But it's just such a tried and true platform, and there's so many formulas that, I mean, you got part numbers. Like, guys will literally, like, do you want to make 550 horsepower? It's like, this part number, this part number, this part number, and you're good. And it does it all day long, like plus or minus like 5 horsepower. Tell me any other platform that you can do that with. Like, I'm not aware of a single one, and we get to play with some pretty wild stuff. And like, short of the Audi V10 and these are like the two ones that are like, everything's been done to them.
Turbos versus superchargers versus NA versus nitrous.
Oh, that in its own can actually be another episode.
That's you know, those are all your different sort of
Power
avenues
adders.
that you could go. You know, each and every one of them has their own place. You know, NA, I mean, and a high horsepower NA is an absolutely unreal sounding engine. Like, you get some of those LS builds that are, I've heard of some of them getting upwards of 10,000 RPM.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but you can just imagine what something like that would
It
cost.
sounds like.
But the sound is just mind blowing.
Also, you can add like another different thing I've seen recently is what's it called? Unequal length headers.
Unequal or
equal length
Headers.
Yes.
And 100
Different
degree
header
headers,
styles.
like 8 into 1.
8 into
Like,
1.
people are getting wild with all of that stuff.
I mean, so if you say start with an LS platform, pick your part numbers, drop down a small amount of money. Okay, I want 550 horsepower, and then you can start thinking about, okay, well, now what kind of header styles do I want, and all the different things, because you know, there's options even in that. I mean, it's one of the most glorious sounding things I've ever heard is a 8 into 1 on an LS.
So which one are you going with yours?
Mine's going to be 180 degree headers.
Okay. So
it's a bit of a unique thing, and it's something that came out a long time ago. But yeah, so I chose that because of what I wanted it to sound like. It has a more exotic sort of car sound, and it's just complicated and cool.
Yeah. When do you know not to LS swap your engine? Because sometimes you might not want that LS sound. And you've kind of also talked about it too with your car. You're like, because you have a Porsche 996.
Yes.
And you were saying that you would not, or you know, saying you would not LS swap.
I remember
a Porsche
I said that
because of
why would you do that? Yeah. I mean, if you break down the sort of the nuts and bolts of why you would do it, cost, reliability, everything that we've already touched on, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's incredible, and the amount of power you can get is friggin' phenomenal. There's people out there that make kits for it. You could just toss it in.
Yeah.
You know, toss it in. But anyways, like in a Porsche, I mean, I would consider myself a little bit more of a Porsche enthusiast. And I love the actual sound and everything that comes along with it. So I wouldn't swap any other engine into my Porsche other than a Porsche engine.
But
what if you need 750 horsepower?
Yes.
True.
So I mean, if that's your if that's part of your
right
checklist
away, that's
of needs,
then you're starting to weigh it out, because to take that stock Porsche platform and make it 750 horsepower, it's going to cost you a massive amount of money. A lot of money.
Staggering amounts of money.
Like custom.
Probably $60,000, $70,000.
Yeah.
Whereas if you swapped in a 750 horsepower LS, it's going to cost you $20,000.
Yeah.
So like right away, it's like, what are you using it for? And then it goes back to that. But if you have that platform, you don't need 750 horsepower, so it doesn't make sense. But it's like, As soon as you start chasing horsepower and trying to throw these wild numbers out that everybody's doing, that's when the LS, that's when it shines, and you can't beat it. Like,
Right.
of course you can beat it. Like, you could build a 2J, you can build a Porsche motor that makes 1,000 horsepower, but dollar for dollar, you can't even get close.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, it's not even in the same realm.
And I think that's a big part of it. I mean, really, that's the big underlying thing that matters a lot. Is like, geez, how much money do you got? You know, and how much do you actually want to use it?
Yeah, because realistically, for me to build 1,500 horsepower in any other platform, this car wouldn't exist.
Right.
Because I wouldn't be able to afford to do it.
Yeah.
So that
Plus, I don't have the people here knowledgeable enough within my, I would say probably the whole country,
Wow.
that would have the ability to build me a reliable 1,500 horsepower Mercedes motor. Like, I just don't know. Like, even I see guys with crazy 63s and they're putting all kinds of stuff in them and they're still doing like 800. So it's like, to get over 1,000 in any other platform that I'm aware of is an obscene amount of money. It doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
And then the reliability is not there.
Yeah.
Like, it's like now you're almost like track only, like quarter mile cars. Like, you get 1,000 horsepower Supra, you can drive it on the street,
Yeah.
but it's not a street car.
No.
Whereas you can have a legitimate 1,000 horsepower LS powered street car and drive it every day.
That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
I mean, we're at kind of a turn of, you know, the world is allowing us to build these crazy numbered, you know, engine builds. I mean, you have to bring in like really sophisticated engine management, torque management, ECU
To handle
stuff
all of that. That's
to be
actually
able to
interesting.
even
Make it
handle
drivable.
that power,
Yes.
right? Like we're seeing, you know, horsepower and torque numbers that are upwards of 3,000
Crazy.
plus. You know, and these guys are doing it with warranty. You know, Sheep U Race, Underground Racing,
blows
all
my
of these
mind.
guys, like, it's staggering the numbers. But they would never be able to. You couldn't use that power without having torque management, ECUs,
Traction
like
control.
Motec and Amtron and all
Then
of these
what's
other
the other
ones.
thing that you guys were talking about the other day of like, it's not traction control, but it helps with like anti-lag and stuff. Like it monitors stuff in like each wheel, or I don't know what it's called.
I think you're touching on like the torque management.
Yeah, it might be
Like,
that one.
it's-
Yeah.
It's like, so like you I mean, I'm just barely learning about this stuff. Our wiring guy, Steve,
Yeah.
he plays around with a lot of like crazy horsepower drag cars. And he was telling me about it, and it's just,
Yeah,
it's,
so
it's
torque
fascinating.
management and boost to gear and
Yeah.
all that kind
Yeah,
of stuff
yeah.
is like, because you can make those horsepower numbers, and now that's the thing is like, for the past probably, we'll say 5 years, maybe it's more, it's like we've been chasing those numbers. Now we got those numbers.
How can we put it
Now
down?
we're trying to make it useful.
Yeah.
So now that's where all the electronics and safeguards and all these different assists that are starting to come into play, because 1,000 horsepower is completely unmanageable. I would say realistically, 650 horsepower
the
with
sweet
no aids is
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like, so now trying to make these crazy numbers manageable, it's like now you're in a whole nother game. Like,
mean,
now
that's
you're adding even more stuff.
So that's that's a different conversation right there. Even is like, even though that these crazy numbers are obtainable, you know, with an LS, it's super reliable and affordable and obtainable.
Yeah.
Is it something you actually really need? Like,
Well, that's
I
the
mean,
other side of it.
unless you invest the 10 G's plus for a torque management super traction control system to be able to manage that, well, what are you doing, right?
Well, I think that's a big disconnect that social media has brought, is they give you the impression that everybody has this.
Oh, yeah.
1,000 horsepower.
Everybody
this,
has 1,000 horsepower.
that.
Unless
like-
you got it, you're not even
You're
in
not
the
in the club,
conversation.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I know like 3 people that have 1,000 horsepower, and I'm one of them. Like, they make it seem like it's just the most common thing, and it's really not, because it's not usable.
Yeah.
And like we have like a circle of friends that are also car builders, and you hear all the time that like you're like, hey, whatever happened to that car? Guy couldn't drive it, so he got rid of it because it's terrifying. It's
After
horrible.
building 1,000 horsepower or high horsepower
you get in
car.
your head, you build put all these numbers into it, and it's like you built a motor, but you didn't build a car.
So it still has the stock.
Well, they put some
chassis
stuff in
and-
it, but I mean, they're still using technically antiquated stuff. It's just either bolstered versions or maybe modified
Newer
versions of
yeah.
older stuff.
Yeah.
And then you put 1,500 horsepower in it, and it's
wasn't
not
made to handle
manageable.
that,
The thing's
yeah.
terrifying,
Yeah.
and then the people don't want to drive it. It either sits, that's why you never see it on the street, or like most recently, we just heard about like a 2,000 horsepower car that was supposed to be a race car. They can't do anything with it, and they got to back it all up and try to make it streetable.
What?
It's crazy, but a lot of these cars
That's
get built
sad.
focusing on a number that's just not usable. Like, it's not realistic. Like, you have to be really, really honest in what you're doing, because it's going to be terrible. Like, you take something like a Lamborghini Huracan, which is an insane platform, all-wheel drive, and it can barely make 1,500 horsepower manageable. Like, you can drive it in a straight line.
Yeah. The all-wheel drive one.
Yeah.
All-wheel drive.
All-wheel drive.
You do that to a two-wheel drive
No.
one, and you put
You'll be
1,500
spinning
horsepower
for
in your
days.
average 69 Camaro, you're probably going to die.
Yeah.
So,
You'd be working those electronics to,
Yeah.
to their maximum potential, that's for sure.
so car building has evolved immensely now that those numbers are easy. They're actually easily attainable. Like, it's not. This isn't some, top secret skunk works race shop turning out 1,200 horsepower motors.
Yeah.
Like, any kid can do it. Like,
That's
you can get
so
some
awesome.
Chinese turbos and make 1,200 horsepower.
Yep.
But you're putting it in a 30-year-old car, like some shit box with terrible brakes, terrible suspension, and then now the rest of it's trying to catch up.
Yeah.
It's like, seems like things have kind of like, okay, cool, we're good at 1,500. Let's start making better cars.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's kind of, I think, where we're at in the game now. Whereas it's
Yeah, because the chassis needs to be able to handle the power potential that's available there now
Yep.
easily.
Yep.
There has to be a balance in power and handling.
but you still don't need it.
No.
Like,
no,
I say it all the
but
time.
you want it. Yeah.
You want it. Because, I mean, I get in that conversation with people all the time about my Evo being track car, take it to track, take it to track. It's like, this thing would be the absolute worst track car.
Yep.
It has 1,000 more horsepower than it needs. So the thing would be ridiculous.
It would
Like,
be
absolutely
so dumb.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way. Like, you have LMP cars, and they have all the resources in the world. Like, nothing but money. Rarely do you see them with more than 1,000 horsepower.
Yeah.
Because they just can't.
Yeah, you can't use that on a
You
track.
can't use it.
No.
Like, you can't use it anywhere. So it's like, if you're following what they're doing, there's no way that you could possibly believe that you're going to be able to do it any better than those guys.
Yeah.
Like, I don't believe I can. Maybe some people got the attitude or the arrogance to believe that they can, but
Yeah.
it's not realistic.
Okay. Anything else before I think, I don't know how long we've been on, but probably a while. So if you've made it this far, thank you.
And if you want to get where you're going, put an LS in it.
Yes,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah.
So anything else you guys want to add?
No, I think that's it.
Sweet. Okay, we will see you guys next week. Have an amazing day. Bye.